Okay.
So I'm really excited about this show. I want to say there is so much information on internet, the lectures, documentaries, which last 6 or 8 hours. It's amazing, so great, lots of information. So I'm very happy to welcome you, John. How are you?
I am just fine, Didi. You?
I'm okay, thank you. I have a few questions which I wanted to ask you because they are kind of, in my head for a long time, and you're the right person to ask, I guess.
Well, it depends on the questions anyway, don't you think?
So there is so many interesting stuff which you did through your life. It's amazing. I mean, I was so inspired. Even I was listening these long lectures which you gave. It's a really something new, something different. Because every day we're hearing this in the school. For example, I'm very kind of upset that children are still learning this thing, in the books, like this thousand and thousand slaves pulling these big rocks, and they are not actually engineers. These people who write these books, and Egyptian had such a great connection with the cosmos. How they can be so connected to universe around them? What do you think? And for example, this pyramids were built under Orion constellation. They are so advanced mathematical buildings. The accuracy is obsessive. So these people must knew something we don't know and we don't understand. What do you think about that?
Well, yes, we can understand how much they knew. What we don't understand is how they acquired it, and it goes much further back than the academics will allow, because actually because of the Sphinx theory, because of the water weathering to the Sphinx, which demonstrates, and the geologists are 100% agreed upon this. It's the academics, the archaeologists and the Egyptologists who deny it, but it's a geological question. So an archaeologist or Egyptologist's opinion is effectively worthless. It's no better than a proctologist's, if you know what a proctologist is. Look it up.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Anyway, the evidence is all there that they had this knowledge, and now in the last few years, a number of studies have come up from some very, very interesting scholars demonstrating that this cosmology that the Egyptians possessed, is more or less the same thing as the latest discoveries in contemporary cosmology. The big difference is that modern mathematicians and astrophysicists express this cosmology through mathematics, and the ancients expressed it through myth and symbol. But when you get to the bottom of it, you see it's the same cosmology. So somewhere back in the very, very distant past, before there's even supposed to have been any civilization at all, there was a civilization that had this extraordinary, sophisticated and advanced knowledge. And our work, and it's not just me, I'm one of the, let's say, earlier transmitters of the knowledge, but I didn't invent it either. I get it from very, very ancient sources, from Gurdjieff, a lot of it from Gurdjieff, and from the remarkable French scholar with the unpronounceable name R.A. Schwaller-de-Lubac. So it's not as though I'm inventing any of this. I'm transmitting it, and in certain instances, developing it still further. But there's a big study. There's a lifetime's worth of study there.
I believe that.
Backing this up, and our project. I mean, our aims in the immediate future. Actually, I don't know if you're planning on asking this, but we're waiting for the contract to come through. We think we have a contract coming up to initiate further research. We were lacking this all of these years. We didn't have the funding, the money, or the permissions, but now we think we will have the money to do a lot more sophisticated research I will be going over to Egypt, if all goes well, if the contract actually comes through and we sign it and they pay for it, in July with Robert Chalk, my colleague, and his wife and my son, actually, who's going to be project manager, to get permissions to do further geophysical work with radar and seismographs and so on. And with a bit of luck, after all of this time, we actually expect to present the case in such a way that they can no longer pretend that the evidence doesn't exist. So, in other words, this could be, we think we now have, we say in English, the smoking gun. We think we now have a whole arsenal full of smoking guns, and it will give me considerable pleasure to destroy all our enemies.
Yeah.
Made life miserable for us for
Yeah.
the last 25 years or so.
Yeah, I can imagine. So basically, do you think that this knowledge were degraded, like kind of transformed from earlier dynasties through Egypt?
Well, probably. You see, the funny thing about the mystery schools is they don't advertise their secret societies, and we're pretty good at keeping their secrets. So we really don't know. What we do know, we see the results. So, for example, the great cathedrals of Europe are instruments of sacred science. We can measure it all. I mean, we can find the extraordinary, sophisticated relationships that are involved, and measures and geometry that are involved in these sacred structures. But what we don't know is how they communicated amongst themselves. Shwala de Lubitsch talks about a school, a secret school of initiates who kept this going in ancient Egypt for at least 3,500 years. And according to us and the geology, it goes back many thousands of years earlier than that. They knew all of these things, and they knew how to manifest it, but they kept the knowledge to themselves, because knowledge is very dangerous, and in the wrong hands, it becomes deadly. I mean, for example, what goes into an atom bomb or a hydrogen bomb is knowledge that the ancients actually had in their own way and understood. They understood the relationship between vibration, between frequency and form, but they were smart enough not to try to produce a bomb out of it.
Yeah.
And they had their own technology, which we in fact cannot reproduce today. Even we couldn't build a Great Pyramid. We couldn't construct a Sphinx temple or a Valley temple next to the Sphinx. Unfortunately, it would be good if we had visuals up of these things, but that we don't. So we have to do without it, because words don't convey.
Yeah.
In fact, the extraordinary precision and the massive quality of these buildings that are done, even if the accepted dating is accepted, and it's the Sphinx and the pyramids at 2500 BC, it's still a total mystery about how they accomplished it. We think we have found the funding to carry out the next stage of research that we hope will be definitive. We've been fighting this battle since, what's it going on now? We had a presentation back in, when was it, 1991, at what's called the GSA, that's the Geological Society of America's annual meeting, which is sort of, you might say, it's kind of the World Cup of geology.
Yeah.
And the geologists, who are the only ones whose opinions count in this matter, were 100% agreeing with us. But the Egyptologists and the archaeologists would have not, to this day, accepted that we really have the solution, at least the proof that these earlier sophisticated civilization existed. So now we think there's another stage to go. We know exactly what to do, and it's not even that fantastically expensive. We just need the permissions from the authorities, which we think we can get, and we need the money to be able to do this fairly extensive research. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Stay tuned, everybody.
I wish you so much luck. I hope you're gonna move this kind of, I still don't understand why they are kind of like, horses. They just don't look on each side. They don't accept maybe other options.
It's easy to understand, actually. It's a psychological thing. It has nothing to do with reason or science or evidence. It has to do with their position as experts. And you see, I mean, if you're an academic, scientist, scholar, whatever, as an academic, you don't make an awful lot of money. You also, it's not very glamorous, but where their egos reside, it's not as though they're superstars. A couple of them get to be superstars, but mostly they don't. Where they get their, what massages their egos is their role as experts. And then somebody comes along from out of, we say again, an Anglicism, from out of left field, and somebody without credentials like myself, and says, you guys are completely wrong, totally wrong, and you're going to have to go back to the beginning and rethink everything that you believed for all of these years, and what gave you your PhDs and all your degrees and your published books. Everything has to be thrown out the window.
Yes.
Because of the geology, the water weathering to the Sphinx. So they don't, needless to say, they don't want to accept that. And as long as they own the playing field, they're able to keep us to a certain extent suppressed, but not entirely. Here we are, we're talking at 3,000 miles away from each other. And this will get to, I don't know how big your audience is, but it'll get to a number of people who otherwise would never get to hear about it until maybe generations pass and the thing finally takes root and gets accepted.
Yeah, so that's true.
This is where we are. This is where we are at the moment, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, this technology is amazing. I mean, like you said, we are like loads of kilometers away from each other, and we can see each other, we can talk to each other. It's amazing. And still I believe, like, people in this era, they think, oh, we have a like iPhone, and this and that, but I'm still believing in past Asian kind of civilization, they had such a more kind of advanced technology. Like, for example, we know about the Ark of Cabinet, we know about the crystals, we know about this, a lot of this kind of strange thing. We know this stuff, they have a power, but we don't know how to use it. Like, for example, another day I was reading something about the Stonehenge. They actually used this big giant crystal in the middle, and it was vibrating these kind of frequencies. They don't have improvement and stuff. So I'm reading all this bunch of stuff about this.
You have to learn to be discriminating. These are hypotheses, they are conjectures, they are attempts to explain what is actually at the moment unexplainable. We don't know how they did it. So they did it with sound waves. They did it. There are all kinds of hypotheses out there, but you have to be really careful with these things, because on the one side you have people. We have a name for them, unicorns. Actually, I'll go back a little bit. Chuck and I have planned to do a book together about the whole Sphinx theory that will be called Dancing Down the Bridge of Sirah. Have you ever heard of the Bridge of Sirah?
No.
Probably not.
No.
It's a Sufi image, and it describes the Bridge of Sirah is what you have to traverse, what you have to go across in order to get to the truth. And on one side of this very dangerous bridge, it's described as narrow as a razor's edge. And on one side is the chasm of credulity. These are the people who will believe anything, no matter how little evidence there is. On the other side is the abyss of skepticism, which is the people who won't believe anything, no matter how good the evidence is. So you have to somehow or another get down this very dangerous bridge in order to get to the truth. So when people say, "Oh, well, we know it was crystals, or we know it was sound," no, we don't know. We only conjecture, and that's all that we can do at the moment. So you have to be really careful about this because the debunkers, they call themselves skeptics. Skeptics are people who question. The opposition are not people who question. They think they already know. So they are debunkers. Anything that they don't already agree with is automatically considered New Age nonsense. And actually, my stepson, who lives in England, he's a composer, came up with this image. He was talking about, very good composer, actually, he writes good music. He was once describing New Age, the album covers for New Age music. And he said, it's all a bunch of airbrushed unicorns. that's the image for that wing of the New Age where anything goes. So you have to be super careful about that, because if you're going to be serious about it, you can't just say, so and so says there's a big crystal. Well, we don't know. In fact, we don't even know if there was an Atlantis. What we do know, because the evidence points to it, is there was a very sophisticated civilization in the very, very distant past that knew a lot, and we don't know how they knew it, and we don't know how they did what they did. That we know. Yeah. But you can't pretend that we have a solution for it already. There's nothing wrong with speculating, but you just have to, the language has to be a bit different, that this is speculation. I like it. I think it's very interesting and so on, but it's still speculation. When you get to the deeper knowledge, let's say the constructions themselves, the Sphinx, the Sphinx temples, those are facts.
Yes.
And you can't deny that. And you also can't deny, or you shouldn't, the debunkers do, that there's anything special about them. There's a lot special about them, and we couldn't do them. We couldn't reproduce them today.
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. This is wrong. So there is still so many people who believe that is a fact that people actually built the pyramids. They believe there was 1,000 slaves.
No, there weren't slaves. They had slaves, but the slaves couldn't have built the pyramids. On the other hand, just because we can't explain how they did it doesn't mean that aliens did it.
Yeah.
That's now you're back there with on the unicorn ranch. There's absolutely no evidence. It's a possibility. But anyway, what you have to do actually, Didi, is you have to come on one of my Egypt trips.
I will love to.
That's what you have to do. Because there we have 2 weeks. And not only can we have these discussions, but we can have a vodka while we're having the discussion, which we can't do on Skype. This is the major disadvantage of Skype. You can see who you're talking to, but you can't have a drink on it. So
that's exactly my kind of story as well. You should have a glass of wine and talk all night or whatever. That's right. Hot summer night. Amazing.
But, this is fine. Yeah, in Egypt, it's a perfect place. But seriously, so anyway, let's try and stick, because as I said, I'm very long-winded and I digress all over the place, and eventually I get back to the subject, which in this case is the proof of the ancient civilization via geology. And this is actually people who are interested. One thing led to another. It's a really interesting story, and I can't get into the long story about how all of this happened. When Jacques and I write our book, Dancing Down the Bridge of Sirah, we'll tell the whole story in detail, because it's really good. It's food in itself for a feature film or a novel or something or another. Wait, I almost lost my thread here. So we presented this at the GSA meeting back in '91. It was headlines all over the world, and it generated this very successful documentary, NBC documentary, that won me an Emmy, and that was seen by hundreds of millions of people, and managed somehow or another not to make any money because my partner in the project stole $150,000 from the
Oh no, that's
budget.
bad.
But without him, he's a very interesting guy. Without him, it never would have happened. It was his energy that made this whole thing happen. But that's anybody now with Netflix can see the mystery of the Sphinx. It was hosted by Charlton Heston, because in order to convey the complexity of the entire study, you really have to understand its various aspects. And the video was really quite well done. And the video really demonstrates the geology in a way that no amount of conversation that we have. I mean, one solution to it that I've done on a number of occasions is because I have a PowerPoint presentation, because I often give lectures, and I have a PowerPoint presentation. And if you wanted, I could send you electronically. I could send you the presentation, and you could.
That will be great.
You could put at your leisure and use whatever you like illustrations that in fact that back up the science.
You know, some people actually, you know, who are interested in this kind of subject, they do know, I think, but in general, I'm not sure.